Hello, everybody, and welcome to our latest Agile Nugget video. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Gunther Verheyen, independent Scrum caretaker on a journey of humanizing the workplace. Gunther, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Stuart, and thanks for having me on the Agile Nuggets recordings or series. Cool.
It's lovely. It's lovely. I can't not mention the fact that you have the best beard in the world. Coming from somebody who can't grow a beard, it has to be mentioned. So, congratulations on
Thank you very much.
that.
It wasn't an easy journey, but look, it worked out.
It's impressive, but I will remain focused on our nugget. Before I get there, I just wanted to sort of create the connection. So absolutely delighted to have met you at the Regional Scrum Gathering in Ghent. And of course, I'm grateful that you came to my workshop on humanizing vulnerability. I'm grateful for that. And also, it was wonderful to see your fantastic keynote on moving your Scrum downfield. So it was and I'm glad that we both
Yep.
shared the scarf model. So
Yeah, absolutely. Indeed. It's because we're both into humanizing. It's important to know what connects people, what makes people thrive and what motivates people. And that's all in those ideas from psychology and neuroscience. Cool.
so nice when you see those connections and you can see how emotional intelligence and things play out in everything that we're talking about. Thank you so much. And of course, I reached out and said, we create these agile nuggets. Do you have any insights or quotes? And at that moment, you basically gave me about 100 amazing insights. I think we may need to have a
Yeah.
discussion about maybe a book illustrating. We'll talk about that later. But top
Cool.
of the list, one that really jumped out at me was this one here, which was complexity is our world, simplicity is our path. Uh, really love this quote. I made as best attempt as I could to visualize your thoughts. What are your thoughts behind this quote?
Well, it starts with complexity, and one of the main motives or things that motivated both the emergence of Scrum as well as the Agile movement was to get to people the idea across that software development, where both have their roots, right? That software development essentially is a creative, cognitive, complex activity, and not, as many people seem to believe, an industrial manufacturing-like activity. So and complexity is in itself already in the work of software development, meaning what we do, people hardly align or synchronize on priorities and so on. We have no idea what we need to create. It's even more difficult to figure out how to create it because we and both are connected to the fact that complexity is in the work that we do in the sense that we never build the same product twice or let alone multiple times. That is a manufacturing um, view. We never produce the same products twice, so we never get to do it again. It's not repeatable. In that sense, it's not predictable. And that itself makes it already complex, let alone the fact that we just talked about the people aspect of it. Right? We talk about humanizing,
Mm.
meaning creating more humane work environments. That means it's all about people. It's about human beings. So the work in software development is done by people, with people, stakeholders, and so on, and also for people, end users, consumers of the work. So, and those three aspects, the what, the how, and the who, is in itself already more than enough to say that, wow, software development is highly complex, meaning it's full of uncertainties. It is not predictable. We have no idea what is going to happen. And even if we would try to predict what is going to happen, even then there will be unexpected emerging events that will pop up anyhow, often in things beyond our control, our environments, our markets, competitions. So there's so much. So the work that we do, plus it's complex in itself, plus we do it in very complex circumstances. Our organizations, the competitive markets that we have to thrive on, and so on. So complexity is our world. Now, the problem with complexity is that you can't tackle complexity with complexity. That will end up in chaos and total loss of control, totally, because you can't use complex tools to deal with complexity. And we all know that the way to deal with complexity is simplicity. And as we all know, Scrum is what we call a simple framework, meaning it only has a limited amount of instructions, let's say, only a limited amount of mandatory elements. And that is the simplicity of Scrum. So the choice for Scrum to deal with complexity should also be a choice to choose the simplicity of Scrum and stick to that simplicity. Because with those simple rules of Scrum, you can devise very complex creative strategies and ways to deal with those. If you would have to do that with a complex approach, you're so lost. End of discussion. So you need simplicity. But then there's this additional problem that people think that by using Scrum, that the problem will become simple. And that was never the idea. The idea is to use a simple approach to tackle a complex problem, not to pretend as if the problem itself would be simple, because that is what I call simplistic. That would be a simplistic view, thinking that just by using Scrum, the problem will become simple. No, it will never be simple. That's even in the end why we don't just organize things in short cycles that we call sprints, but also that even within those cycles, that we have this thing that we call a daily Scrum, a way to on a daily basis, check in with each other and absorb any potential changes. So unpredictability is so high that even in a short sprint of 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks, even within such a sprint, a lot of unforeseen events might occur, and we want to help people deal with that. So stepping away from a predictive approach and totally going for that empirical approach, combined with what we call self-organizing. And in the picture, the visual that you created, Stuart, by the way, I totally envy your visual skills. My life is going to be too short to really get even up to your ankles trying to do that. But I love them is that you present complexity and at the same time, the simplicity that we strive for, in that sense, build a group of people around the problem. And in that sense, create a path of simplicity, iterating, building increments, reflecting, learning. In the end, what Scrum calls inspect and adapt. So a group of people inspecting and adapting, that is the path of simplicity that we need to tackle complexity.
I love that. Just something you just mentioned there around the human, the cross-functional working. And there's something about that, right? There's something about the humanization. In a world of not knowing, you cannot have all the answers. And that was kind of at the core of what I was trying to talk about in Ghent as well, is the power of not knowing leading to collaboration, being vulnerable. Because if you have all the answers, you don't need to deal with complexity. If you have all the answers, you don't need Scrum. So I think it does come back to the power of those connections and those humans with varying divergent thoughts and diversity of thought being key.
Absolutely, because what you just said is sort of spot on. First of all, you can only plan for what you know.
Yeah.
And it seems to be a really big step for people to admit that there's also a lot of unknowns that play a role. And you can never plan for that, let alone for the fact that even the things that you do know will change and will behave differently and so on. So that is indeed complexity. But that acknowledging of there is a lot of things that I have no idea about, that seems to be quite a mental step.
Yes.
Because, in the world of business, you have to be brave and pretend that you're big and you know all things. So that's what you talked about. It requires a lot of vulnerability
Yes.
to even be willing to acknowledge, I'm not really sure about what's going to happen. But you know what? And that's what we Scrum guys try to bring to people. You know what? We've got a tool, an instrument to deal with that.
Yes.
And that should make you feel at least a little bit more secure about all the unknowns that's going to pop up.
This could be another Agile Nugget, vulnerability leading to dealing with complexity. We could go further. No,
Yeah, absolutely.
we could do. Look, I could talk to you forever. We had an interesting conversation before this recording on just the word simplicity. I often talk about simplicity being key from a visualization perspective, and it's really interesting to get your perspective on that simple word. I also just want to say to everybody, if you don't already know, and you should do, Gunther's a fountain of knowledge. And if you want to find out more information, I very much highly recommend checking out his book on Scrum, a pocket guide, and a fourth edition is on its way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that edition, I do elaborate on that complexity and variables and playing a role in all those things. Yeah. And will allow me to close with one thing that I find really important, and that's connected to humanizing, what sort of binds us both, besides all of the other things that connects us, is that underlying Scrum, it's what I call Scrum's DNA, are for me two important management principles, ideas on how to deal with complexity. And that is empiricism, right? We know empirical process control, inspection, adaptation, sort of the process aspect of Scrum, but also self-organization. And that is what I call the people aspect of Scrum. The one is more like, for me, in a visual world, would be like more blue, sort of cold. And the other one would be like really red, the people aspect, the hot burning thing. And the reason why I think, Stuart, you and I are focusing on this idea of humanizing is because we need to restore the balance. People are overly focused on the process aspect of Scrum and not enough on the people aspect. And that is where the future of Scrum will thrive once we get people to acknowledge that self-organizing aspect of Scrum.
Love it. Recently had an Agile Nugget by Heidi Musser around people over technology. So it's good to know that we're all heading in the same direction. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having this, Stuart.